Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Lupus LA Your Story, Our Fight podcast, brought to you by our good friends at GSK. Today, I have a very special guest, a good friend of mine and somebody who I've actually been a part of your lupus diagnosis. So please welcome LaToya Johnson. LaToya is a personal trainer. She is, beyond that, a YouTube sensation through her partnership with her boyfriend, Julius. They're part of the Juice and Toya. That's how they go on YouTube. And what do you have, 155,000 followers? I didn't get my daily update today.
As of this morning, yeah.
So, amazing. Yeah. So amazing. So check them out. We're going to be talking a lot more about that. But you were diagnosed really recently. And I should just say to everybody how we know each other. So Julius is my trainer, and you train my wife, Lori. My beautiful, thanks to you and her natural genes. Yes, that is true. But so tell me, how did your lupus sort of come about? Because you've had a incredible life of healthy living and fitness, and so I know this was a big surprise for you.
Yeah, I think kind of going back to what you said, the incredible life of health and fitness, I think there were a lot of things leading up to it that I wouldn't say I ignored, but I just thought, I blamed it on the health and fitness, like achiness and joint pain and things like that. Maybe the chest pain that I started having, blamed it on a pulled muscle for a long time. So I think a lot of it for me was just I'm too healthy to have a diagnosis like that. Like I was like, oh, I'm healthy. I work out. I eat well. There can't be anything wrong, So I think for a long time, I just didn't think it could be something more than just a pulled muscle, So.
And tell me, what were some of those early symptoms that you now look back on?
Now looking back, chest pain was probably the biggest one. And it would be here and there every couple of months to progressively to where every single day I was waking up with chest pain. And, kind of like I said, it kind of felt like a pulled muscle at first. And then when it happened every day, no matter what I was doing, I took time off to try to let it heal, and it was still coming. So chest pain was really the biggest thing. And then I started noticing joint pain, mostly in my wrist, to where I couldn't make a fist. I'd try to pick up a kettlebell, and Julius would say, oh, you worked out hard yesterday. You might be a little tired today. And I was like, no, I can usually do this weight. This isn't a weight I can usually do. And I noticed I couldn't grip it anymore. So I was just noticing little patterns of things I used to be able to do easily that just kind of went downhill gradually, So, but yeah, I'd say chest pain, fatigue, and joint pain were my biggest symptoms to start. So.
And what led you to look for rheumatologists beyond sort of a traditional?
So I also have had Raynauds since I can remember. I mean, I remember a track meet in high school where my fingers turned purple to where, and my toes turned purple to where I had to scratch my race. I couldn't run. And I just thought, oh, it's really cold outside. All of our toes are purple, And so looking back, that was another big sign. And I had a coach tell me, oh, it's normal. It's because it's cold outside. And so that's kind of what I went with for a long time. And then I started to notice that also progressively got worse, the circulation and things like that. So a friend of mine, she noticed that and was like, you should see a rheumatologist. I have Raynauds and she has an autoimmune disease. And so I was like, oh no, well, I'm not, everything else is fine. I don't have any other autoimmune symptoms. It's normal. Everyone's told me it's normal. So that was one sign. And then once I started having the chest pain, I also had a blood clot in my foot. Kind of talking to a doctor friend of mine, she kind of pieced together that it could be something autoimmune. So so that kind of led me on the path to rheumatology.
So I want to jump back because I want people to understand kind of the amount of health and fitness. I mean, you were a bikini bodybuilder competitor. You were a track and field star.
Yep.
Played basketball.
Yep.
Give me that sort of, and then.
Yeah, I mean, I was always active. I played 3 sports in high school. I was in a running club in college. I did my bikini bodybuilding competitions in college. So I was always active. And I think when you see someone so active and heavily active, I was really good at my competitions. I was really good at all the sports that I did. So I never, when there were aches and pains that came up, it was always blamed on, well, you run a lot or you lift a lot. Of course you're achy, And so, I think it was overlooked a lot because of how healthy I was. But I think to me, that should have been a red sign. If I'm this healthy, if I'm eating well and I'm working out so much, why am I having so much consistent pain? Like, why does my chest constantly hurt? My fingers shouldn't be turning blue if my circulation is good, So looking back now, I think it should have been more red flags versus just dismissal of how healthy I am. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that's not an uncommon situation. So when you received your diagnosis, which was within the last
in
18 months,
October of 2020. So not almost a year now. So
give me the feeling. Was it relief? Was it, how could this be? Or was it, aha, this makes sense?
I think more aha and relief, because leading up to it, like I said, I actually saw one rheumatologist who I had a positive ANA and some little symptoms. Like I had a little bit of the butterfly rash, but it never flared really bad. My C3 was a little bit low, but it wasn't that low. And so same thing, she was like, oh, let's just keep an eye on it. You're young, you're healthy. It's nothing bad. And so a couple of weeks later, that's when I had, severe chest pain to the point it led me to the hospital because I thought I was having a heart attack. I mean, I couldn't breathe. I was getting stiff. I lost all feeling in my hands. I mean, it was scary. And so at that moment, that's when I was like, okay, this isn't normal. Something is clearly wrong. Something is getting worse. And I'm just passing it off as I'm healthy because I'm still alive, So once I got that diagnosis, it was actually relief of like, okay, now I know what this is. And now I can move forward to fix it or heal or, manage the symptoms. At least I had an answer of what was going on, because I was healthy and I ate well, I exercised. So to me, it was like, if I'm doing all of these things right, what is wrong? What is going on wrong?
Mm-hmm.
So it was nice to have.
And we'll give Dr. Daniel Wallace his appropriate shout out now, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That was, I think to me, the biggest thing, as amazing as he is, it was nice to have someone listen that looked past my health history of working out and, not smoking and eating healthy and all these things. Okay, if you don't do all of these things, what is wrong? So it was really nice to have somebody listen to my symptoms and then, find the answer for me. So yeah, shout out to Dr. Wallace.
Shout out to, yes. Now, what I found really compelling about your story is that you didn't really take any time between the time you were diagnosed and the time you went pretty public with your diagnosis. You put a post on Instagram that I think everybody should check out. We'll put a link to it or something if we could do that, because it was really moving and touching and I thought really courageous of you to come out and sort of tell, you have a lot of people that really pay attention to you for health and wellness and what prompted that?
I think for me, it was, my job and lifestyle revolves around working out, showing the workouts, and encouraging others to work out. And during that time, it was really hard for me to work out. Part of that was because the chest pain, there was no answer. And so I was scared, to make it worse or to get my heart rate up and then something go downhill from there. So then the other part of that is there would be days that I would wake up and I would crush a really hard workout. And then there'd be days I'd wake up and I couldn't move. I was just fatigued, tired, joints are achy. And so I just wanted to show that it's not always okay to just push through and go hard. You don't always have to do that. There are days where it's better if you listen to your body and rest and recover and stretch, and instead of putting on the front of just like, I pushed through it, I wanted to kind of give that example of, look, I have to take some time off now. I need to listen to my body and just kind of start back from the beginning and see what I can push myself to do, and encourage others. I think some people look at our YouTube, for example, or just fitness influencers in general and think, well, they're pushing through it. And I didn't want to give that example because there might be times that pushing through it is just going to make it worse, So
I tell Julius that every time we work out. I tell him, hey, we got to take it easy. You got
to listen to your body. You got to listen to
my body. My body's saying I really don't want to do squats. And exactly.
So never squat. But yeah, I think right away I wanted to do that just because I knew from that moment my journey would be different. And so I wanted to show that from the jump, that there's going to be days where especially we had a YouTube that was growing, and I knew at that moment there might be days where Julius will have to lead the workout and I can't do it, and to explain why, to explain that I have to listen to my body today. If I push through this, I might fatigue myself more, or my joints might swell up even more, So, I had a ton of people that reached out that were like, I have lupus or I have autoimmune diseases, and I always felt like I had to push through it, or I was being lazy, or I felt like I had to push through it, or I wasn't going to get better. So it was nice for them to hear that it's okay to take a step back and then come back to it when you're feeling up to it.
Mm-hmm. So, I was going to, that was my next question, was what was the response you received, and how did that affect you?
It was overwhelming in a positive way. I didn't realize, one, that I had so many people that followed me that had lupus or autoimmune diseases. I had no idea, but that made me realize how many people weren't sharing it for various reasons, whether it was they didn't know how to, or they felt like, they're following a fitness influencer. They don't want to seem like they can't do what I do, and so to share with them, like, no, I take a step back too, like I have rest days, or I have days where I plan to do this huge workout and I get to the workout and I just can't, and so it was really awesome just to see how many people were like looking up to that, and they just found that was like inspirational for them to see like it's okay to take a step back, which also to me was a little sad that I was like, wow, like we do need to talk about it more, how many people are kind of suffering silently, So yeah, I think it was a really eye-opening thing for me, for sure. So, yeah.
And so tell me about, because I know nutrition is also a giant part of what you do, and I know our listeners and viewers are really hyper-focused on the things that they can do to affect positive change for their illness progression daily, so what do you recommend to people, most of which I probably do not follow, and you yell at me all the time, but tell me what you recommend.
I think
what's changed changed since before you were diagnosed, and how you altered things.
So for me, colon and digestive issues, which looking back now were a big part of that inflammation, but those were also my earliest issues. I had my first colonoscopy when I was 18 years old. And every time it was just, your colon's so inflamed, stop taking ibuprofen. And I remember always saying, I don't take ibuprofen that often. Why is my colon, why is that? Why are we blaming it on that? And I just brushed it off. I was like, all right, I'll stop taking ibuprofen, even though I hadn't been taking it. So that was already a big issue for me from 18 until now I'm 28. And so my diet was already, I had to pay attention to it. There were a lot of like fried fatty foods, for example, were just horrible on my stomach. I'd get really nauseous. So my diet in general was pretty clean for the most part, lean meats if I ate meat, vegetables, anti-inflammatory fats, olive oils, avocados, and things like that. But I would say the biggest change for me, though, was drinking wine. I noticed even before my diagnosis, I didn't know this was the reason why, but having 2 glasses of wine, the next day I felt like I was hit by a truck. I mean, I'd wake up lethargic, very, very achy. My fingers were swollen, and Julius would be fine, and I'm like, man, like maybe it's the wine I'm drinking, or just drinking in general. Even having 1 or 2 drinks, I would just feel horrible the next day. And I realized that was one big thing that caused a lot of inflammation in my body. So that was a big change. I had to really you know, if I'm going to drink, I had to understand like, okay, that glass of wine, you might feel that even more the next day than you used to, you know. Fried foods, that's another one. I just feel like I don't digest it the same, you know, it just is like a feeling of just kind of sits in my stomach. I'm bloated for a few days. So I really, diet was a big one I had to pay attention to in terms of my colon and inflammation, and then energy wise. So, you know, fatigue is a big thing that I dealt with too. And so having foods that just like fried foods or just eating large meals all at once, it just weighed me down to where I felt even more fatigued. So I try to eat, you know, lean meats, lean protein, vegetables with each meal, and keep the carbs complex. So just in terms of the energy and fatigue in itself, and then the inflammation, I think those are big things that helped personally for me with my lupus and journey. So yeah, the wine was a big one. The wine was a really, really big one. So yeah.
No, I found that too. I don't drink really hardly ever, because it definitely, I think I have a different response to it than the average person, you know?
Yeah, that was one thing I noticed. Like if we went out to eat and had like a dinner, one glass of wine, and I'm already, it wasn't a, oh, I feel that glass of wine. It was a very like tired and draining, and just the next day it was like I had to take the whole day off because I was just so fatigued from having a glass of wine. So those are things that I just realized, like, is it worth it anymore? You know, like having like fried foods, I really have to say, like, is this worth feeling like crap the next day? You know, so yeah, as good as it is, as good as all the fried food is. Yeah.
That one I haven't crossed that bridge yet, you know. Still.
One day.
But, all right, so here's the thing I want to talk about, and I'm assuming Julius is there somewhere because we're in a pandemic and you guys are always together. But I want to talk about how the lupus diagnosis affected your relationship. Yeah. So why don't we do this? I want to take a break, and then we'll find Julius, who's probably doing, you know, his 800th pull-up or something like that. Right. He's lifting a car. I don't know. But so we'll be right back, and we're going to bring in Julius, and we'll be back after that.
Please visit our online store at lupusla.org. By purchasing Lupus LA products, you are directly supporting lupus patients and their families. For more information, visit lupusla.org.
We are back on the Lupus LA Your Story, Our Fight podcast, and this is a first for the Your Story, Our Fight podcast. We have two people on the same screen. Please welcome Julius White, the other half. I'm not going to say the better half because it's totally the opposite, but the other half of Juice and Toya.
Thank you for having me.
And of course, so tell me, I was actually there when you guys met back in, you know, a long time ago, ages. So I've been a part of this relationship one way or the other, whether you like it or not. So but tell me about this sort of inner workings. You guys have a really special bond, and how did that diagnosis process, how did that affect your relationship as you've gone through this whole lupus story?
I think it's made us closer just because we've kind of had to work through this together. You know, it was kind of hard to watch her helplessly, you know, deal with this, you know, over the course of weeks and months. And it's been actually, you know, years now that we think about it. A lot of these symptoms happened, you know, 5 years ago when we first even met. So it's just been a process. I've been helping her since we were friends before we got into the relationship. So it's been something that's brought us together. We kind of work together on things. When she's not feeling well, obviously I pick her up when she's down, but she's been a soldier through everything. She's been fighting it, and I think it's really helped us not only, you know, come closer together, but also want to do more outreach, you know, help more people, because that's what we do on a daily basis. We want to find ways to help people who could be experiencing this too. So yeah.
And I think personally, for us, we had the YouTube channel before the diagnosis, and the YouTube channel for us was a way to reach a wider audience. We did, you know, videos on Instagram and like here and there, but YouTube, you're just able to reach, you know, just a wider community. And so I think the diagnosis also has given us a different platform to use that platform with, you know, like we're able to reach the people who come to us for the workouts, but then also able to reach the lupus community or autoimmune community as well. So it just kind of expanded our horizons, I feel like.
For sure.
And I know one of the things that makes the Juice and Toya YouTube channel unique is that the two of you do your workouts together, and there's modifications in each exercise. So how much of that, I know that wasn't specifically designed for the lupus community, but tell me about how that came about and why it's so helpful and what makes you guys unique. I
think going into it, we always wanted like a broad audience. Like we didn't want to have just like a small demographic. So we wanted to try to do things that reach, whether it was like teenagers or kids, all the way up to people who are older. We wanted everybody to feel like they could do it. You know what I mean? Like I've trained your dad. You know what I mean? He's older and he trains better than
Betsy can do some pretty crazy things.
Exactly. So we never wanted to put limitations on certain types of content that we wanted to put out. We wanted something for everybody.
Yep. And I think with YouTube especially, we get a lot of people who say their doctor told them to literally get on YouTube and YouTube 20-minute full body workout. And so those are people who may be starting from the beginning. They may have never worked out before and they're doing this because of health reasons, or it's time to start moving, so they're starting from ground zero. Mm-hmm. They may not even know where to feel a squat or how to do a lunge, So we wanted people who were starting from zero to all the way people who can do flying push-ups. We wanted something where everyone can feel like there's a workout that they can do. So
because we understand how intimidating it could be too. You could go on Instagram or on YouTube and see some big buff guy, and it's like it's not
welcoming.
It's not very welcoming. We try to be as approachable as we can with our content. That way everybody feels like they can be a part of it.
And the blessing in disguise with that was once I got this diagnosis and I had to kind of like scale back and I was doing the modifications, it was actually good because I couldn't have done those advanced moves. I mean, there were times where if you look really, really closely in the videos, I was fatigued. And so if I wasn't doing the push-up on my knees, I probably wouldn't have been able to keep up. So it worked out great that in that moment, I needed to do the modification. So it was showing like, I'm strong, I can do all these crazy things, but there might be times where I need to just scale it back and do the modification. And you're still going to get a good workout, So yeah, it worked out.
And I think, I think that's a really good advice. And I think it's one of those things that as your business has evolved, I think that's become a really big part of it. I think it's really what it is one of the things that makes you guys super unique. And now I know also when you were diagnosed, LaToya, you started participating right away in a clinical trial.
Yes.
And I don't think we've ever talked about clinical trials on this podcast, but I wonder if, was that decision something you guys talked about together? Because I know that there's a potential that you're not on the drug, for that, and so that potentially delays treatment. And so tell us about how you guys came to that decision to go forward with that.
I think we definitely talked about it together. And I think outweighing the pros and cons, it was one of those things that if I am on the placebo, I trusted myself now to understand my symptoms, to say, hey, this is getting worse, something's not right, to also have a good doctor now that I can also go to that will listen to me. So I think those were big decision factors in saying, you have eyes on you now, you have care, you have people that are listening, and you understand now what you're looking for and what you're going through. So I think the trial for me was really cool because it's helping others as well. And I feel like I'm at a point where my organs are okay. Like if I'm going to do a trial and it's going to help others, this is kind of the time to do it, where everything, I feel healthy, I feel good. And if I have those days where I feel off, I know how to manage that now. And should things get, a little less manageable, I know that I have a good doctor to go to. I know that I have, like people that I can ask, hey, have you felt this before? Is this something lupus related? Like now I just feel like I have more of a community.
And the resources.
Exactly. Versus having chest pain blindly and not understanding where it's coming from. So. I think that.
No, I think it's brave, you know, and I think a lot of people want to go and try to do a clinical trial, but I think that's a really, really good description of sort of the safety net that's involved there.
Exactly. I think it was definitely a brave decision, I think, for his, you know, mental aspect too, because it was like, well, the what ifs, you know, what if you have the placebo and things get worse? But I think, like you said, having those resources and the safety net kind of helped.
And with her, I trusted, like, she's super, you know, she's a trainer, so she's super in tune with her body. So she knows, you know, especially now she can kind of differentiate, you know, what's soreness from a workout or what's, you know, achiness from a flare
or something.
To the point where she knows when to shut it down and knows when to kind of go hard.
Sometimes.
So, sometimes. we work on that.
But. If you've ever seen LaToya's heartbeat monitor on her watch during a Chiefs game,
we're working on that this season.
We're working on that.
That was another red Right.
So give me your best advice for the new. You know, I pretty much ask everybody this question: the advice for a newly diagnosed lupus patient. And you know, since you were so recently diagnosed, I think it's really relevant because. You know, it's really fresh in your mind.
Yeah, and I'm still learning, you know, every day there's things that I have to say, is this normal or is this, you know, something progressing, you know? So I think the biggest advice that I would say is trust yourself and listen to your body. Because I feel like I could have been diagnosed a lot sooner had I pushed a little bit more for what I knew I was feeling in my body. And even once you get that diagnosis, still listen to yourself and trust yourself and what you're feeling, because there's a lot that, especially being young, you know, I was diagnosed at 27 years old, where it's, you know, oh, well, I'm still young, I'm still healthy. But when you feel those things, it could be, you know, the sooner you get it diagnosed and the sooner you really listen to those symptoms, I feel like the better your journey will be and the better quality of life. So.
And I think from the outside of things is like expressing your symptoms, like finding somebody that, you know, will listen to what you're feeling. Because I think the biggest thing with her is like sometimes she'll forget, like she has so many symptoms or so many things that she's going through that I'll bring up like, wait, no, like last Thursday you were feeling this. And she's like, oh, you know what I mean? So sometimes she kind of, you know, forgets things that she's going through that I can remind her to, where it helps her stay in tune with her body. So if, from the outside of things, I think, you know, finding somebody or someone that you could let know, like, what are your symptoms, you know, on a daily basis, whatever the case may be.
And with that, I would say too, finding a community. So when I followed the Lupus LA Instagram page, I see different things also where someone, you know, might come on a podcast and say, like, I started noticing, I thought it was sunburn and it was actually the butterfly rash. And it kind of, you can kind of relate to people too. And because everyone's journey and diagnosis is so different, that having that community of finding people that can relate to what you're going through also helps a ton. So for me, having the Lupus LA resource was huge, you know, and even though we'd done the fundraisers and, you know, went to events before I even knew I had lupus, now I look at it a whole different way, like the stories, and I read a lot more of the posts and things like that, because it's like he said, I forget sometimes. So then I'm like, oh yeah, I was feeling that too. Okay, that's normal, you know? Yeah. So having that community of people helps a lot. Yeah. So, yeah.
And now after doing this podcast, I just feel terrible for Julius, because now I realize he has to listen to your symptoms, but he also has to listen to mine and keep track of all mine. So it's like, he's like a double lupus supporter.
He is an advocate for sure.
He is. No.
Exactly.
Yes, I know. You're going to be an expert soon. So, well, listen, guys, this was really personal for me, and I appreciate you guys doing this, but I want to encourage everybody. We're going to put up links to the Juice and Toya YouTube page and Instagram accounts, and I really think every lupus patient should be following them, because it's a real positive way to get healthy and learn about training and nutrition and all sorts of things in a really great way with great people. So thank you guys for joining us.
Thank you for having us. This was so much fun. Thank you.
On behalf of the entire team at Lupus LA, we thank you for joining the Your Story, Our Fight podcast. Please tune in, spread the word, and come back for more inspiring lupus stories. I'm your host, Adam Selkowitz, wishing you good health, and to always remember, your story is our fight.